Sympathy, some of the previous speakers have talked about sympathy and empathy. The reason I've got that there is sympathy. Sympathy not quite the same as... I'm using sympathy there in the sense as it was used by Adam Smith, writing in his book called The Theory of Sentiments. He's not meaning feeling sorry for people. What he's talking about is understanding, human understanding between other human beings. And I suppose the subtle difference I would say between sympathy and empathy would be that I was present at the birth of my daughter's children. And by the way, when I said that to my students, most of whom are girls, most of them went, "Ugh, that's disgusting. What a foul idea to have your father there when you're giving birth. I mean, revolting idea." Anyway, my daughter wanted me there. The thing is, I could sympathise with all the pain she was going through, all the discomfort and so on, but I couldn't empathise. I'd have to be a woman to empathise. So I guess that's a kind of difference between sympathy and empathy. Mimesis. Mimesis is using your body to represent meaning. So, for example, just if you pay attention. Okay, now is there anybody in the audience who doesn't know what I was doing there? You know? I'm sure you do. And I'm sure you never sat in a classroom, you know, however many years ago and had some teacher say to you, if you're in Morocco in 20 years' time and you see some fellow charging across the stage banging his bottom, that he's pretending to be a horse, you know. You didn't need to be told that. Oh, and by the way, if you think about it, I wasn't just pretending to be a horse. I was also the rider, and I was also the whip, all at the same time. And we take that sort of complexity in children's play completely for granted. The thing about it is that ability to understand the meaning of other children's and eventually people's physical actions is something that we develop while we're playing. The fourth one on there is affective attunement, which is somebody you will know is a concept thought up by Daniel Stern. And if I'm just, for those of you who don't know what it means, it depends a lot on the concept of rhythm. And Stern says that this develops very well during pregnancy, when mothers are pregnant. Here goes. What this involves is a mother, say a mother sees a baby trying to pick up that bottle, and the baby maybe will go like that. Well, what Stern says is mothers don't just copy that. What they tend to do is go, or, and you see what's happening there is the mother has picked up on the rhythm of that action, but translated it into another form. And if you can do that, that's an extremely powerful message to give to a child, to a developing child, because the subtext of that is not just, I understand what you're doing. It's also, not only do I understand what you're doing, but I can transpose it, transform it into another medium, another form. Now, children are desperate to learn, and there's a message there that says, I can help you learn. That's the subtext of it, is I can help you learn. So developing affective attunement is a very, very powerful thing. And although Stern says that it's a thing that tends to develop during pregnancy, and mothers that develop it become very attuned, I actually don't agree. I think the reason I've grouped these things together is because I think we are born with the potential to develop these things, but the way we develop them substantially is through play, is through playing with other children. And as for the idea that it's pregnant mothers that can do this, I'll show you a piece of video footage later which clearly blows that one out of the water. So a lot of these things are developed from the basic concept of rhythm. And babies pick up rhythm, pick up the concept of rhythm in the womb. They have an acute sense of, obviously, of their mother's rhythm. So their mother's rhythm will be the pulse and the heartbeat and the pace at which the mother walks and the voice pattern of the mother and so on. But we now know, don't we, that babies can actually hear outside of the womb as well. And so they will pick up the rhythms of those who are generally in the mother's arena regularly. So the baby will have an idea of the rhythms of those people. But the most important thing is they'll have a concept of rhythm. And so we come into the world with a very acute sense of rhythm, and I'll just give you an idea of how that might work very effectively. I don't need to read. I was doing some training with some of the girls in the hospital, and over one summer, and on the very last day I was there, unfortunately, they said, come and look at this. And there was a little girl called Liliana who was in another room all by herself. And they hadn't been working with this child because she was blind. And they didn't know how to work with her. And so they sort of said, what can we do, you know? So I walked up to the bars of the cot. And to begin with, I checked out whether she was blind, and of course most people who are said to be blind are not entirely blind, and it turned out that she clearly could see shadows, because if you moved your hand in front of a light like that, she would sort of follow the shadow, obviously. So she had an awareness, but something else that I'd been told was that she was frightened of men. And I stood at one corner of the cot and I said, Liliana, and she backed straight away to the other corner of the cot. So I sang to her. I sang Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing it. And, oh God, I will. No. And at the end of the song, she went, while the song was going on, she was going like this. The hospital records said she was mentally retarded. And I don't know about that. I wouldn't mind betting that what had gone on there was that the doctors had seen this peculiar face, this peculiar behaviour, and had thought this is the sign of someone with some sort of learning disability. Anyway, she kind of doing this to locate where the sound was coming from. And I got to the end of the song and she went, ah! Which I took as a cue to sing it again. So I sang it again. And sure enough, at the end of the song, again, ah! But also she started coming across the cot towards me. I sang it 3 times. By the time I'd sung it the 3rd time, she was actually standing in front of me. So at that point, I started clapping in time to the song. And at the end of the first time I did that, she did the ah again. Second time I did it, she actually grabbed my hands and squeezed them. And she didn't make the noise this time. So I took that as a cue again, that she wanted me to sing again. And so I started singing and she let go. And then I did that about 2 or 3 times. Each time she grabbed my hands. On the 3rd or 4th time, she actually pulled my hands apart and clapped them together. And I sang again, same old song over and over again. And eventually she grabbed my hands, stepped back and started clapping herself. We saw the wonders of rhythm with the drums this morning. She started clapping herself in time to the song, and I sang along with her. That all took about 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, you're already able to use this basic idea of rhythm to make a relationship of sorts with the child. I went back, this is my last day, as I said, unfortunately. I went back later in the evening and walked into that particular salon, and I said, Liliana, and immediately she came across the cot and sort of tried to grab me, and we had a little sing again. Okay, so that's it. I'll stop there. If anybody would like to ask me any questions about it, I'm around for the rest of the, certainly for the next 2 days. And so please do come up to me when you have a chance to think what you want to ask. Okay, thank you. There are 7 identifiable emotions, basic emotions, 4 of which are negative emotions: fear, disgust, anger. But the 3 identifiable positive emotions of physical activity, physical contact, some sort of loving relationship, loving emotional relationship, and play. And those are the 3 emotions that release opioids into the frontal lobes of the brain and enable you to learn, and enable you to reason, and enable you to live a positive sort of life. And the thing about those 3 things, put them together, is rough and tumble play. Rough and tumble play gives you all 3 at once. So there's a concern in our world, in the Playwork world, that children nowadays don't get enough rough and tumble play, that particularly in after-school clubs, which are very often run by women. There's some research been done which shows that women are more inclined to intervene in rough and tumble play at an earlier stage. Men will toss babies higher in the air than women will. But men will let rough and tumble play go longer than women will. So there is a sort of concern that because now so many of our children are in after-school clubs run by people who probably don't understand the value of rough and tumble play, that the rough and tumble play actually gets stopped. So I think, going back to the Romanian example, one of the things that's going on there with Sophie and Edith in particular is a lot of rough and tumble, a lot of engagement with the children in a way that they certainly would never have had before. They've had no engagement at all. So I think the Congress has been very, very valuable, particularly for me, in as much as it's brought me into close contact with a whole load of play therapists who I've never met before. This is very rare for me to come to any sort of conference where I actually don't know a single person. Until I got here. Now I know loads of people. It feels as though this has brought the professions of play therapy and play work much closer together, and in fact we are talking about possibly developing a play therapy, a postgraduate play therapy course at my university.